Alright, so as I'm sure you saw by the title of this video, in this video I'm going to be comparing my entire Sony NEX camera collection, which includes the NEX-3n, the NEX-5, the NEX-5n, as well as of course the NEX-6. So I'm going to be talking about all these 4 different cameras, basically which one's best for which situation, which one you should buy depending on what you intend to do with it. And it's basically going to be a nice relaxing video to keep you entertained during this quarantine. And if you're watching this in the future, then I'm sure you probably know what I'm talking about. But either way, cue the relaxing music, let's get into this video and talk about some cameras. Alright, so I'm going to move these out of the way, and we're pretty much going to go in order from the 3N to the 5 to the 5N to the 6. Alright, so I got some notes pulled up on my computer here. I'm basically going to be going over the specs of each of these cameras and which one's best for certain situations and basically the pros and cons of these cameras. I'm going to try not to make very many cuts in this video. It's just going to be a nice, relaxing, probably kind of long video. So stay tuned, grab some popcorn or something. Let's start things off right here with the Sony NEX-3n. So this camera right here was released in 2013. It goes for about $90 used on eBay for just the body only. It's a 16 megapixel sensor. It shoots at 4 frames per second continuous, 1080p at 24 frames a second for video, as well as 1080p at 60i, which is interlaced. It's kind of really useless in today's date. Feel free to comment if you do use it and if I'm wrong here, but 60 interlaced is kind of like 30 frames a second. It's like a weird, I don't know, you probably shouldn't use it. Just stick to 24 frames a second. That's basically the only frame rate that this records in. It has a full flip screen, which is really good for vlogs, which I'll get into in a minute. But yeah, the screen flips all the way forward like this. It does not angle down at all. It goes basically from, normal, just all the way up, so anywhere in between, but it does not angle down or to the side or anything like that. Let's see, also, it has a built-in flash, which some of the other ones do not have, which is also pretty cool for photography or anything like that. And an awesome part about this camera, I think they should have done this with all of the NEX cameras, but they put the SD card slot on the side of the camera. So usually on lower end cameras, the SD card slot is right down here with the battery. So if you ever want to change the SD card, you have to take it off a tripod, you have to open it up, which usually turns the camera off. I don't think on the Sony cameras it does, but I know like on my Canon camera, as soon as I open this flap up, it basically shuts the camera off. So, I gotta go through all that, gotta take it off the tripod just to get the SD card out. And the 3N, it's right here. So, I actually have an SD card in it right now. It just comes right out the side. And if you've been shooting video or photos for a while, you probably understand how nice this feature is. It's really underrated and it's just a great feature to have. So that's basically the upsides to the NEX-3n. Again, it's around $90 used on eBay, so just under that $100 mark. It's a great value, a really small camera. You can basically put it in your pocket without a lens on it. I mean, that thing's tiny. So that's it for the NEX-3n. Now, let's head over to the NEX-5. So mine right here is not in the best condition. I actually have to tape the battery doors shut because it's broken. But it still works, that's all that matters. So the NEX-5 has a bit bigger of a grip than the NEX-3n does, and it just feels like a little bit of a bulkier camera. And it is also the step up because the 3n is basically the lower model, and then the 5 is above it, and then obviously the 6 and the 7. First things first, this right here was released in 2010. It is the oldest out of all the models I have here today. It goes for about $80 on eBay, so it's cheaper than the NEX-3n. Also for some other reasons, which I'll get into. This is a 14 megapixel sensor, so it's a lower resolution sensor than the NEX-3n. It shoots at 7 frames per second continuously, as well as 1080p at just 30 frames a second. There's no 24 frames a second, there's no 60 frames a second. It's just 30 frames a second in 1080p. And that's about it. This camera does not have a full flippy screen. It goes that far up, and then it also angles down, which is a really good plus if you want to get high up angles or something like that. So that's really good, but again, it does not flip all the way forward, which kind of sucks. Like I said, it only shoots 1080p at 30 frames a second. It doesn't do 24, 60 frames a second, anything like that, which kind of sucks because for most films and just most I guess, professional work. I don't really want to use that word, but that's kind of what I can think of right now. 24 frames a second is kind of the standard. Makes everything look a little more cinematic and less, you know, video-like, I guess you could say. So 30 frames a second isn't the best frame rate for films or stuff like this, but again, that's all it does. So just 30 frames a second, and it's really cheap. It's pretty old. It really doesn't have the best features. You know, it'd be good for a tight budget. That's about it, but we'll get into that later. So next up, the NEX-5n. So this was definitely a bit of an upgrade from the NEX-5 in a couple different ways. Let's get into the specs. Let's see here. So NEX-5n, this was released in 2011, so it's a year newer than the 5. It goes for around $100 on eBay for the body only. It's a 16 megapixel sensor, so more resolution, and it shoots at 10 frames a second continuously, which is pretty awesome for photography. Also, this shoots 1080p at 24 and 60 frames a second. So that is great for if you want to do any sort of filmmaking. 60 frames a second will give you some good slow motion capabilities, and 24 frames a second obviously is good for cinematic videos or anything to really look more filmic than 30 frames a second. Now this camera does look very similar to the NEX-5, and basically all the buttons and dials and stuff like that are the same as the 5, including the screen. It does not flip up all the way. It goes that far up and then, you know, tilts down just like the 5. So basically everything else about it is the same, just pretty much just a little increase in specs, which is really good because this is basically the bottom line. Like these specs on the 5N are basically what you're gonna wanna have. Anything lower like on the NEX-5 is just, in today's standard, in 2020, when these are like 10 years old, these specs are basically just cutting it. 1080p 24 frames a second just cuts it right now. I mean, that's what I'm recording this video in right now. Obviously, higher bit rate and stuff. We'll not get into that. NEX-5n, I would say, just cuts it for video use. And photography use, the 16 megapixels is great, and the 10 frames a second. But there is the king of photography, which I'm gonna get to right now, and then we'll kind of, you know, go over all the rest of the stuff and who I would recommend each camera to for what different scenarios and uses. But let's get up to the last camera, the Sony NEX-6. This camera is the biggest jump out of all these cameras in terms of basically everything, talking about build quality, specs, everything like that. This camera is a big jump. So let's get right into the specs and talk about what this camera does that these cameras do not. First things first, the Sony NEX-6 was released in 2012. And it sells for about $180 on eBay. So it is a pretty big increase in price. It's almost double what some of these other ones are, but we'll get into why in a couple of seconds here. So this camera has a 16 megapixel sensor and it shoots 10 frames a second continuously. Let's see, it does 1080p at 24 and 60 frames a second, just like the NEX-5n does. This camera has a built-in flash like the NEX-3n. If I can pop it out here, there we go. Built-in flash, which is also great. And what this has that none of the other cameras have, which is definitely a reason for the price increase, is a built-in viewfinder. This right here is great for photography or for any sort of photo work. Built-in viewfinder is awesome. And that is basically the pros of this camera. You know, things that it does better than the rest. Built-in viewfinder, a lot better build quality. I don't know if I mentioned that yet. This is like basically the build quality of the A6000, which is like the tier above all these. But really good build quality. Same screen that kind of flips up and down. It's a little different. The hinge is on the bottom rather than the top, like on these ones. But yeah, it doesn't flip all the way up. It just flips straight up and down, and then it goes down a little bit. SD card slot is in the battery area, just like the rest of them besides the 3N. So these are all pretty similar in terms of the basic main specs, but they do all have their pros and cons for different uses. So let's go right back to the NEX-3n and talk about what this thing would be good for. I would recommend buying the NEX-3n if you plan on doing some sort of vlogging or something like what I'm doing right here, like studio work, because of the flip screen. Having the screen flip forward like this is fantastic for filming yourself, whether that be vlogging like Casey Neistat or something, or having your camera up on a tripod in the studio like I'm doing right now to record yourself. It's really hard to film yourself without being able to actually see what you're looking at, you know, see if you're even in focus or in frame. So I would recommend the NEX-3n if you're doing any sort of travel vlogging or recording yourself, because it's super small and light, easy to throw in a backpack or a pocket, and great for vlogging with the flip screen. All right, the NEX-5. I would recommend this camera only if you're in a really tight budget. You can sometimes find this camera for like even $60. Like this one right here, I got this with a broken battery tray that I just kind of have to tape shut. I got this for I think like 60 bucks with a lens, and then I sold the lens and basically broke even on it. So if you're on a super tight budget, you can scour the internet, find kind of a beat up one like this for like 50, 60 bucks, and you can start taking pictures with it. Obviously you have to buy a lens as well, but for a really tight budget is the only time I would really recommend this. Besides that, it's very outdated and it's really just not very good at anything. It'll get everything done, you know, it records video, it shoots photos, but it's just not the best in its price range unless you can find it for just super cheap, like 60 bucks. And if that's all you have to spend, then yeah, go ahead, buy it. I mean, you know, if you're just getting started, anything is better than nothing. You know, this camera can definitely get you started with photography or videos, but I would recommend just saving up if you can for something like one of these other cameras. Next up, the 5N. This one right here is a great camera. I mean, it's really, like I said, kind of the bottom line for videos, but I would recommend this if you want to get into any sort of like filming, video recording, you know, filmmaking, anything like that. I would recommend this as long as you're not vlogging, because without a flip-up screen, vlogging is pretty difficult. And this really doesn't have any advantage over the NEX-3n in terms of vlogging. So if you want to do any sort of filmmaking and get into recording video, whether it's recording video of your family or friends, or trying to get into like cinematography or something and your budget is super low, the NEX-5n is great. It shoots 24 frames a second, it shoots 60 frames a second, you can get some slow motion, you can get some nice cinematic footage, and it's around the $100 mark. So I would recommend the NEX-5n if you want to get into any sort of filmmaking. All right, last up, this right here, the NEX-6. So this right here, I would recommend if you want to get into photography. With the features like 10 frames a second, continuous shooting speeds, the built-in viewfinder, 16 megapixel sensor, this is just a great camera for photography. And something I forgot to mention actually, this has a full-size hot shoe, so you can put a flash on this thing, well, a regular flash. These also have flash mount, well, the 3N doesn't. These actually have flash mounts, but they're really proprietary. You need like a Sony flash. So for photography, you can use a regular flash with NEX-6. Like I said, 10 frames a second, electronic viewfinder. This is great for beginner photography, especially if you throw on a vintage lens like what I have on it right here. This is the Canon FD 50mm f1.8. It's a cheap lens, it's a nice cheap camera for getting into photography. I would definitely recommend this for photography. And that wraps it up with all four of these cameras. They all have their pros and their cons, they all have their best use scenarios. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it kind of kept you busy during this quarantine. I know it's been tough staying inside all the time, but I wish you luck and stay safe. And let me know if you want to see any more videos like this, or if you want more in-depth comparisons, because this is more of just a quick run over of my collection and which one, you know, I'd recommend for certain things. So yeah, let me know if you want to see more in-depth comparisons between any of these cameras. I'm going to be doing a NEX-3n video soon because I haven't made a video specifically about this yet, but I've made videos about all of these other cameras actually, so I'll link them in the description if you want some more videos to watch while you're inside. I got a video about the 5N, the 5, and the 6, as well as the 5R and the NEX-3. I'll link all those in the description so you can check them out and pretty much get a better idea of what NEX camera you should buy. But anyways, I'm not going to run on any longer. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay safe. Make sure you subscribe and check out my other videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Alright, I'm sure nobody's watching this right now, but if you made it this far, let me know in the comments. That would be awesome because this is a pretty long video and it seems like nobody really watches all the way through. So let me know if you're actually watching this right now. But this is the new studio. If you didn't notice, I'm sure you did unless you're new here. So if you're new here, subscribe. But either way, I kind of got the new studio. I'm going to show you real quick, kind of behind the scenes tour. So as you can see, it's, well, not all the way painted. I didn't really have enough paint to complete the whole wall. So I pretty much did what was going to be in the shot, and this is it right here. So you probably know this is the normal studio, I guess, the original one that I made. So it'd be kind of like this shot right here. Yeah, something like that. But this wall was pretty plain. It was just regular drywall, non-finished. So we decided to get some gray paint and basically paint it so I can have secondary studio area. So we have that right there, or whatever, you know, however it was in this video, and then this one right here. So yeah, that's it right there, kind of the new studio. I moved the lamp right there, painted this wall kind of a light gray color, and I got the shelf going with the light here. Should better turn that off actually. Yeah, there we go. Just want to give you a little behind the scenes. Custom studio is a success. I think it looks pretty good. Let me know what you think. If you like this new kind of gray wall, flat wall studio better, or if you like this corner orientation, like, you know, that sort of thing, how it was before. Let me know what you like better, but I hope you enjoyed seeing kind of a little behind the scenes. Again, I don't know if anybody's watching this right now. Definitely let me know if you are. And let me know if you like the new studio, and if you want to see more of this, or if you want to see more of the classic one. Let me know. Okay, I don't want to run on any longer. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it if you're watching this far, and see you later.